Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
And we are absolutely delighted and thrilled. But before we introduce our guest, there is one of the great mysteries of life, Robert, and we might even ask our guest about this because he may know the answer.
What is that?
Dressed in denim or lace.
Yep.
Yeah. The song is actually called Denim and Lace.
Ah.
Now, we don't often have this opportunity either, but we are going to ask the guest to introduce himself by doing this.
Hi, this is Marty Rhone on 94.7 The Pulse.
Marty Rhone, there you are, doing your own work. Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show.
Thank you, guys.
Why is it denim and lace instead of denim or lace?
I don't have a clue.
And that's what we like on this program, definitive answers even if they don't know the answer.
Look, it's the only answer I can give is that the song was sent to me as a country demo, and I didn't like it at all. And I said to my record producers, I said, look, I'm not a country singer. I'm a sort of a rock pop singer. And they said, well, what would you do with the song? And I said, well, firstly, I'd turn it into a rock song, which I did. I added that high guitar riff, and gave it a chunky sort of rock feel, just sort of straight rock feel. In regards to the lyrics, all I can say is that maybe denim and lace sounds easier, rolls off the tongue easier than denim or lace, but I do make the compromise. The last two times I say it on the record, I say denim and lace, because I thought, seeing that it's on the label as denim and lace, I better say it at least once or twice.
Because Rob was a bit confused when he saw that, and he's worn both denim and lace this morning, and he's got a beautiful, I think you describe it as like what do you call that top thing?
Oh, shut up. Get on with it, son.
Marty, take us back to where it all started. We will, of course, talk about your show, which is the whole point of you being on here, but let's talk about you and where it all started and where you started music and stuff.
I was at Crow's Nest Boys High School in Sydney, and I had a high school band called the Blue Feelings. And we went for an audition at Channel 9. We thought it was for a television show, but it was actually a secret audition for a new record company called Spin Records, which was owned by Sir Frank Packer, the whole Packer family and stuff, and magazine empire. And the producer, or the A&R man, Nat Kipner, an American, came out and said, hey kid, I like you, I hate the band. So the next day I was in at Consolidated Press there in Park Street in Sydney, signing a 7-year recording deal. You never hear of 7-year recording deals these days. And so then I embarked on this crazy journey that I'm pleased to say has now lasted 56 years.
It is quite amazing, and again, you are relatively well known in Australia as far as records go, but you did do a lot of good work in the US of A, which people in Australia probably aren't aware of. So the start-off point with that American accent and the contract probably kicked all that off for you. How have you managed to remain very Australian, which you have while your American life was lived out?
Look, I never wanted to lose my connection to Australia, and I never wanted because, quite frankly, I think Australia's a better country. But it's an interesting question you ask, because as you know, not a lot. Some Australians go over there and they start to talk like this. But a vast majority of them, just springing to find names now. Hugh Jackman and others like this have retained their Australian accents, and which is great, because we are Aussies after all, and we like to spread the word far and wide. And if we don't speak our true Australian accents, they're not going to know. A lot of Australian artists have gone to America, and people have thought they were British, and unless they say they're Australian, the Americans are confused.
And particularly, around that sort of 1969-70 where we had some Australians just starting to spread their wings a little, and you end up with bands like the Axiom, beg your pardon, Euclid and Shorrock is involved, with a song called Arkansas Grass, and you get John Paul Young singing about how far it is to Pasadena. It was almost like we didn't want to write songs about our own towns.
Look, you're absolutely right, and it didn't really happen until Axiom morphed into the Little River Band in the late 70s. That you started. I just realised they started to talk about the Hilton in Vegas and things like this. Now, I think it was probably not until the late 70s, 80s that we really started to have sufficient confidence in ourselves to start writing about things that were very Australian. The Men at Work were probably the first that really did that in a very strict sense, Down Under and songs like that. But no, I don't think we've got any reason to be apologetic. We've punched well above our weight in terms of our population and in terms of how many actors and how many artists have been successful internationally, and I think we should be very proud of our roots.
I still think they should have made that song by John Paul Young, It's Such a Long, Long Way to West Toowoomba.
West Toowoomba.
Yeah, quite have the same ring to it.
True.
Marty, you chucked in Hugh Jackman. Rick Springfield's another one who musically sound, but also have gone into acting as you did over there. If you had your time over again, would you have gone a music path or an acting path if you could only have one?
Oh, gee, that's a tough question. I've been fortunate enough to be able to do both. And it's interesting that they've sort of come along at the right time so that they don't conflict with one another. Like in the 70s, when I Had a Mean Pair of Jeans had just gone to number one, and I went to the UK thinking I was going to continue my recording career and singing career, and it didn't quite work out that way because I auditioned for The King and I, the London production of The King and I with the late, great Yul Brynner at the London Palladium, and I was lucky enough to win a major role in that. And so my career took a right-hand turn, and I went down the acting path in the UK rather than the singing path. And something very similar happened to that in 2017 in the US. I was offered a great song called Graceland on the Line to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the sad death of Elvis Presley. It was given to me by Johnson Peters, another great Australian. And I recorded it, but I was travelling to the US primarily to try and forward my acting career. But as fate would have it, a record producer saw the music video of Graceland on the Line and invited me to a meeting at his studios up in the Hollywood Hills. And his name was David J. Holman, which probably doesn't mean a great deal to anybody when I mention his name. But when I mention the albums Xanadu and Grease and Gwen Stefani, he was the producer of all those three and had a very strong association with Olivia. And so he offered to record my first US country album, which I'm pleased to say has produced 3 independent country number ones in the US and in Europe and the UK.
Just the same bloke in 1975 who said, I'm not a country singer. Gee, you changed your tune when 40 years, it cost 40 years, don't you?
Yeah, I do. But I was lucky also that I was able to do some acting in the US. I did a guest appearance on an episode of Bull, the US series, and Preacher, that way out of left field Seth Rogen series. So I was able to combine them both. And at the moment, I'm travelling backwards and forwards to the US literally continuously.
Marty, I don't expect you to use actual numbers, that's not fair, but just to put the financial reward, some blokes battle away washing dishes and trying to get their band going or their music career, or auditioning for acts and never for acting roles and never getting a gig. What would an episode of Bull mean to someone financially in comparison to a standard Australian worker? Yeah, Neighbours type gig.
Not a great deal of difference, to be honest, because it depends on the significance of the role. Because in the US, they have tiers. Tiers of they have, like, you're either a guest artist or you're either I can't think of the terminology, but they have about 3 layers of roll measured on how many lines you have, how many scenes you have. If you talk on the lowest rung, which is like you walk on, you say a few lines and you walk off, there's not a great difference between Australia and the US. I can tell you where I found the biggest difference between what you paid over there and what you paid here is in voiceovers. I did a number of voiceovers in the US, and I was staggered at the fees they offer for voiceovers in America. The very first one I did was in New York, and I did a voiceover for General Electric. It was like a corporate voiceover thing, about a minute and a half. I got my check, and I was silly enough to ring up the agent and say, have they made a mistake? Because the fee was ridiculous. I could not believe. I won't give you the exact figure, but it was about 10 times what I would earn for the equivalent back here. And it was about 4 hours work in a studio. I could have gone out and bought myself a motor car. I mean, it was just out of this world. I mean, they're not all like that, you know. Let's be honest. They're not all like that, but it depends on the significance of what the voiceover is for and where it's being shown. Well, this particular voiceover was worldwide. It was going to be shown all over the world. So that brings in a higher fee, of course, but it was still a staggering amount.
I'm going to leave you and Rob to finish this conversation. I'm getting an airfare to New York as we speak. If they're doing that over there, that's pretty impressive.
Sounds very good. You mentioned the great Elvis Presley, and another great skill that you've had late in your career is not copying so much, probably complementing the wonderful skills, paying tribute to Elvis and Cliff Richard, which is what is bringing you to town, you doing the Cliff Richard side of it. How did you get into that?
Well, I'd been asked for quite a number of years to do a Cliff Richard tribute going back about 15 years. And the reason that I kept getting approached was that it was coming up to his 50th anniversary. And I didn't want to I didn't want to be a tribute act because I was already an established artist in my own right. So I just kept saying no. And then promoter came along and said, well, look, he said, we're coming up to Cliff's 50th. And I said, well, can we make it different? And I said, for starters, I'm not going to try and be Cliff. I'm going to sing his songs as best as I can. I'm going to do justice to all his great music. But I said, can I suggest something to you? And he said, what's that? I said, how about we do a show where we put the Shadows and Cliff back together again? Because it hadn't been done. And he agreed. So we went out as the Cliff and the Shadows together again. And it was hugely successful. And lo and behold, when we were doing Perth, we sent out an invitation to Hank Marvin to come and see the show. Now, Hank lives in Perth. And we don't know to this day whether he came to the show or not. But as surprise, surprise, 12 months later, Cliff and the Shadows were back together again. So I don't know whether we planted the seed in Hank's mind, because he'd refused a number of requests from Cliff to put the band back together. But who knows? He might have come and seen our show in Perth and thought, hey, Cliff, it's not such a bad idea.
You know, you wouldn't have seen him there because he would have been standing in the shadows.
Incognito.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. So, and I've read somewhere that Cliff Richard's actually at the moment being asked to do a Marty Rhone tribute program as well.
Yeah,
so
he is actually. I was very disappointed when I went and saw his concert at the Entertainment Centre in Sydney that he didn't do Denim and Lace.
Yeah, but he was wearing a mean pair of jeans. Let's be honest. So, Marty, I'm interested why, and I'm absolutely not having a crack at you because obviously you're a very talented artist. But why would they come and talk to you about Cliff Richard? Is it the style of voice, the style of singing? I mean, clearly Jimmy Barnes wouldn't do a very good job of it.
No, that's true. No, it's sort of been known for quite some time, or accepted quite some time, that when we were both much younger, we did look physically somewhat alike. Mm. And also our voices, and it had been documented in interviews and things previously, that our voices sit in exactly the same vocal range on the scale. Like Cliff's bottom note is the same as my bottom note, and his top notes that he can reach are the same as the top notes that I can reach. So that I find it very easy to sing Cliff's songs, or very comfortable to sing Cliff's songs. And the very first song I ever sang on kids' television when I was just 14 years old was Bachelor Boy, which the producers asked me to sing. And so there's been a synergy between us, the two of us, and our careers for over decades.
Have you had the chance to work with him?
No, I've met him twice.
Mm-hmm.
First time, I didn't say anything to him. We crossed paths in his manager's office, Peter Gormley, in London. But I was doing The King and I, as I mentioned earlier, and Cliff had come to see the show and came backstage to see Yul Brynner. Came backstage to see Yul Brynner. He wasn't coming backstage to see me. He was coming backstage to see Yul Brynner. And I was walking back to my dressing room after curtain calls, and I saw Cliff coming down the hallway towards me. And I just sort of put my head down and rather than sort of, acknowledge him or whatever. And as he went to walk past me, he propped and he turned to me and he said, "Nice show." That's all he said. And that's the degree of conversation that Cliff and I have had. Nice show.
The rights to do his music, I suppose that's all done behind the scenes with managers and producers and the like. But in all seriousness, on top of the nice show, would you really like to sit down and spend half an hour with him talking about his music since you are recreating it?
Oh, absolutely. And I'd love to have a bottle of his wine as well, because he produces wine in France. He has his own vineyard and produces his own wine, which would be nice. It'd be nice to sit down with him and have a good long chat, because our careers have had a lot of synergy. I mean, we were both born in Asia. He was born in India and I was born in Indonesia. And we've both done very similar things, career paths, stage musicals, television, acting and film. We've both been in films, and we've both been recording artists. It'd be fascinating to sit down and talk with him.
And length of career pretty close now too.
Yeah, and he's got about 8 years on me. He started his first hit, Move It, was 58, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And my first flop was in 66. Yeah.
Yeah, so because of that song being in the 50s, he's the only artist that's had a hit in, I think it's the UK top 10, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and zeros. And he snuck a very clever piece of marketing, the Millennium Prayer, which he did for the changeover into the 2000s, was in the charts in the top 10 for both the last week of 99 and the first week of the 2000s, which extended that run by 10 years. Yeah, so his marketers are on top of it.
It's still an amazing performance. So you think in the brutal industry that the music industry is, that to have that longevity is extraordinary.
Well, to give you a perfect example, my recording career started in 66, and I'm not kidding when I said my first hit was a flop. Sorry, not my first hit. My first record was a flop. It took me almost another 10 years to get my first hit record, which was, of course, Denim and Lace, and followed by Mean Pair of Jeans and then On the Loose again. But it's a very tough industry. And to have the level of record success that Cliff's had, and the level of record, you don't have to say any more about Elvis. I mean, to have the level of record success, we worked out when we were putting the show together, and Johnson Peters has done a wonderful job at creating this audio-visual spectacular behind the show. The amazing thing about both their careers is that when we were putting it together, we worked out that together, when you put them together, they've had over 60 hits, which is a remarkable number. Now, you can't fit 60 hits into the one show, but we think we've done a pretty good job of picking the best one.
And Johnson Peters is behind this particular show, which we're going to talk about in a minute?
Yes, he produced... I'm also producing the show as well, but John's created this magnificent audio-visual presentation on the big screen behind us. So when I'm singing on stage to, let's say, Summer Holiday or Devil Woman, I'm singing in sync with Cliff. Cliff is behind me. And we're perfectly in lip sync. So
wow.
If Cliff is singing and I'm his voice, but if you look down on the stage, it looks as if Cliff is singing and I'm his voice. If that makes sense, but yeah. It's all synced together, and the whole show pretty much tells the story in a very condensed way of Elvis Presley and Cliff Richard, and how their career has unfolded, and that's what makes the show so exciting.
He's come a long way since 1991. I was at a corporate gig at Hamilton Island, and John was the entertainment for our big dinner, and he had one of those old overhead transparency projectors, and he did a show called Rock and Roll Heaven, and he basically played songs from people who had passed away, and he just put a photo up on this overhead projector, which was then thrown up onto a projector screen in the hotel. So he's come a long way, which is good to know. And we know of your sidekick in this is also a chap called Mark Andrew, and we were talking before about John Lloyd, the tennis player who will forever be known as Chris Evans' husband. Mark Andrew in the last few years has become known as Lisa Curry's husband, but he's the world's leading Elvis impersonator, I guess.
Pretty much. I mean, Mark has been doing Elvis for a long time, but he's renowned as one of the best in the world at doing Elvis. And you may or may not know that about 2 weeks ago at Hamer Hall in Melbourne, myself, John and Mark broke the world record for the biggest ever Elvis concert ever staged anywhere in the world. We had 109 musicians on stage at Hamer Hall. It was a complete sellout, 2,500 people, and the Australian Book of Records have recognised it as the biggest Elvis concert ever staged anywhere, and that includes the King himself, who only ever had about, I think the maximum number of people he had on stage was 47, and we had 109 on stage, musicians and singers on stage at Hamer Hall. And John was presented on stage by the Australian Book of Records at the end of the show, because they can't acknowledge it as the biggest show until they actually physically come along, which they did, and count everybody on the stage. While the show was going on, the bean counters were going 1, 2, 3, 4.
But he's already been on that one. I don't reckon he's been.
And a little extra plug to Bob Pullen, who presents on this radio show. He was very proud to say that both his son and grandson were part of that 109 entourage. So there's another little connection to this radio station, which is, we should be very proud of. So good morning to you, Bob, and congratulations again.
Yeah, it was a wonderful spectacle and a wonderful experience for everyone who was there, and it just shows the power of the late Elvis Presley. I had a colleague or a friend who I've known in the industry for a long time, flew all the way from Hobart to see the show, and he was in tears. He just said that at one point there, when Mark was singing on stage, and they John's production supers Elvis behind him, and they're doing a recreation of the Elvis at the Hilton Hotel in Vegas, and Mark is standing there with the guitar in his arm with his jumpsuit, and he's actually mimicking what Elvis is doing up on the screen. And Hank, my friend from Hobart, said it. He said, I just looked at it, and he said, I thought I was watching Elvis on stage. He said, it all got too much for me.
Wow. Good stuff.
Well, this show that you are going to be presenting in Geelong is at what is known as the Geelong Performance Arts Centre, I think is its current name. It's called the King of Rock and the Prince of Pop. No prizes for guessing which of those two you are. A music hit fest starring Marty Rhone as Cliff, Mark Andrew as Elvis at Geelong's Costa Hall, Saturday the 17th of September. Now, Rob's got his shoes and socks off here, and he's worked out that's 3 weeks from now.
Yes, it is 3 weeks from today, isn't it? Yeah.
So we have both been fortunate enough to see some activities at Costa Hall in the last couple of months, and it's a pretty good stadium for that kind of thing.
Great Geelong venue, yeah.
Venue's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the final show of the tour, which was supposed to start in May 2020, but thanks to a little thing called COVID.
Oh, you had that up there as well, did you?
We had it up here big time.
We had it in Geelong too.
Yeah, so, 6 lockdowns later, and 26 postponements across 10 shows. So.
Wow.
Well, look on the bright side, Marty. It's extended your wonderful career by a little bit more, and hopefully on the back of the success of it, you'll keep doing something in the industry, and I suggest with your versatility, you'll probably find something. Maybe it's something you haven't even done yet. Who would know?
Who knows, yeah.
Well, according to what I can see on the internets here, tickets are still available, surprisingly. Rob, this is 2 hours, what's it say here? 130 minutes of activity on stage, plus an interval and some drinks beforehand and stuff. $75, you'll get change. tickets for this thing, $75. You can get change out of 75.
That's pretty cool.
It is a remarkable value, and the great thing about the stadium too, we sat literally in the back corner of the venue the last time we went, didn't we?
Yep.
And still got a fantastic view, a really good spot to be.
Probably a show that you may have been in your time. We went to see Rock Quiz. Marty, you had a little go at that?
No, but I did the other one on the ABC.
Spicks and Specs.
Spicks and Specs, yeah. I did Spicks and Specs on the ABC.
They are great shows and great ways to hear the stories of people like you. And we're privileged to have heard it this morning, Marty. Thank you very much for joining us, and best wishes when you come to our town.
Looking forward to it.
Well, we played Denim and Lace coming in, or Denim or Lace, depending on what you want to call it. And we're going to go with the mean pair of jeans, if that's all right with you.
That's perfectly all right with me.
Marty, Rhone, thanks for joining us on the Two Blokes Chatting radio show.
Great, guys.
Thanks, mate. All the best.
See ya. Bye.